Hey guys, this is Mathieu Frémaux aka Frameworks. I'm so thrilled to introduce you my new tool called StrokeSetter. StrokeSetter is the missing stroke panel for After Effects. Just like in Illustrator, you'll be able to apply different caps, different joints and different alignments. And more than that, you will be able to apply taper, wave, and even dashes to your strokes in your shape layers. So without any waiting, let's go ahead and get dive in. So in order to install StrokeSetter, it's really simple. You can either use the aescripts install manager, okay? So it's the easy way, and or you can use the manual installation. So to do that, once you have downloaded the file on your computer, just go inside the folder and you'll find both the fxStrokeSetter.jsxbin file, which is the script itself, and its assets folder. Just ignore the manifest. Just select them both, so the script and the assets folder, copy them, and go inside your application folder. I will be using the 2020 version of After Effects, so here we go. And go to the scripts UI panel and paste them here, okay? And as you can see, they are both existing here inside my script UI panels. And once you have done that, just restart After Effects. So let it start for a few seconds. So in After Effects, you will find the script in the window menu. Please do not try to launch it from the file run script file command, because it won't work properly. Just launch it from the window menu, and here we go, it's there, so click on it. And you will end up with this nice UI panel. And the cool thing is that you can arrange this in the way that is more convenient for you. So I like to have it like this in a horizontal line. Let's say, for example, you want to have it there, for example. Okay, so it's a nice idea to have this like that, but you can either have it on the left like this, and as you can see, it tries to fit the space as efficiently as it can. So I like to have it like this in some situations, but the most useful arrangement for me is to have it like that, and rather in the stack here on the right. So I will undock it and place it on top of the existing panel group here. And if I right click on it and I ensure that the panel group settings is on stacked panel group, I can just click on it to reveal it again or to change from panel to panel, okay? So this one isn't that good. You have to increase its size on the height like this, and now it's ready to be used in your workflow. So I will leave it there for the purpose of tutorial. Okay, so first thing, I will create an example of a stroke shape. And yeah, this script is dealing with shape layers only. You won't be able to use that in the stroke effect, which is a pixelated effect, okay? It will only work with shape layers. And if you try to use any of these tools on other kinds of layers that is not a shape layer, you will just have an error message, okay? So keep that in mind. Okay, so let's draw a little shape here. So I will just draw quickly kind of S shapes, like shape layer, for example. And let's add to this same layer closed shape, like a star tool, for example. So let's do this. And as you can see, these two shapes belong to the same shape layer, which is the shape layer 1. And I will create another shape layer by selecting another shape, for example, the ellipse tool, on a second layer. here. Okay, so I have different shapes here. So the two S and star shape layers are on the shape layer 1, and this one is separated onto a shape layer 2. The most important thing here is to understand that all that I have created has created some groups for you automatically, because this is the way Bezier tools in After Effects work. So as you can see, if I twill down the ellipse here, the ellipse has a path, a stroke, a fill, and a transform. Okay? If you don't have a transform option here, it will just be ignored by the script. So it's important to group your contents accordingly to what is mandatory for the script to work. Okay, and by the way, this is the way After Effects work usually when you create shapes from there. But just to show you how it could be in another situation, let's say if you design your creations in Illustrator, I've created a bunch of shapes here in Illustrator, and if you have a plugin called Overload, which is a really great plugin that I use a lot in art direction, you can select all your shapes and just click on that, and as you can see, it will create automatically different shapes like this, and it's really cool, and it creates different shapes because I have this explode and split shape layers option activated. So as you can see, it's really fast to achieve. So I have either these shapes that I've drawn directly in After Effects with these options, and this case if in that comes from Illustrator thanks to Overload. Okay, so I will return there. Okay, so I will select my shapes, and yeah, just to demonstrate it, if I twill down the content here, as you can see, it comes from Overload in Illustrator, and they all share the same specifications. So each shape is in one group, okay? And the script won't work if this is in another group nested in another group, okay? So it will be just ignored. So please take attention to this. You have to have your designs in one level group only. Okay, so yeah, I will continue with this one. It's way better than this design, right? So I will keep this here. So I can select all my shapes at the same time, and I will just increase the value of the stroke width here at the top of my After Effects layout. And I will select all of them and just click on this first one, and it does nothing because it is already the case here. But if I click on this one, as you can see, it instantly updates the cap to be a rounded cap, okay? And yeah, by the way, all the tools in my script here, if you come over your the buttons with your mouse, you will see a helpful help tip here. So it's called, the three first one are called something cap. So here it's a butt cap, the round cap, the projecting cap. Okay, so you can try the different styles here. The three other ones here are the joints. So if I click on meter joints, it's the default, so I didn't change anything. But if I change by this one, as you can see, you can instantly see that the corners are now more rounded. So it's called the round join. And you can redo the meter join if you want to, just by clicking this one. And you have the bevel join, which is like this truncated sci-fi beveled style. So you have the three of them just like in Illustrator, which is pretty cool. So by playing just with the 6 first buttons, it's just like in another tool called butt capper that you may have heard of or already using in conjunction with Illustrator. It comes from Battle Axe, just like the plugin I told you which is overload. Okay, it comes from Battle-Axe. So yeah, it's just like butt capper here. But as you can see, I have way more options to play with. So the three other guys here are the center or the align options. Okay, and this is pretty cool because no other plugin or tool deals with these guys here. And as you can see, the 3x3 grid of icons here, if I have this kind of arrangement, resembles a lot to these tools here in Illustrator. So you have the caps, so round, projecting caps, just like I demonstrated before. You have the corners, meter join, round join, bevel join, and you have the align stroke, which is a line stroke onto center, to inside, and to outside. And if you don't know about it, if I play with this option here, you can see the stroke is normally this path in red here, and the stroke is the white pixels here. So by default it's centered on it, but if I click on that, it will go inside, and if you click on that, it will go outside. Okay, and it's great to have these options in After Effects too. This is why I added this possibility with this. But be careful with this option because it won't work that efficiently with opened path. So in order to avoid problems, I strongly advise you not to select every shape layer, but just to take the shape layers that you want to affect only. Okay, so in my case, I will just focus on closed path, which is this one, this one, this one, and so yeah. And yeah, the other guys here are all or open path, so I won't select them. And to be more clear, I will just apply them a different color, maybe green color. I would like to see the path, but I can't apparently. Okay, so the blue here are open paths, and the green here are closed path. So I will just focus on closed path for the three of them here. So by default, it's already on center, so it doesn't do anything in my case. But if I click on inside a line, as you can see, instantly it has compensated the stroke width. And the stroke width in my case is 40, so it has pushed the pixels 20 toward the inside in order to have exactly like in After Effects. So it's inside and this is outside. Okay, you have the exact inverse, which is pretty cool because it can serve in a lot of situations as well. And every time you click on it, it will readapt to the stroke width. Okay, and just keep in mind that each time you click on this, it will apply or it will modify an offset here, which is just an offset path right there that I've renamed FX stroke offset here in each group that have a stroke. So for example, this one consists of a group 1, which is the triangle, okay, and a group 2, which is the pentagon. And yeah, it's try to dive into each shape layer and to find a stroke. And each time it finds a stroke, it adds FX stroke offset, which applies if you have an inside, for example, minus the half of the stroke width. Okay, and if it's on the outside, let's have a look. So it's minus 20, for example, but if I click on this, it is plus 20 now. Okay, so yeah, this is the way it works. So if you have some problems or if you see some strange things with open path, for example, if I do that, as you can see, you have something pretty weird here, and this is not really what I want. So yeah, it won't work properly with open path, and this is why I only selected these guys here to make my demonstration. Okay, cool. So it was the 9 first simple buttons here. And now let's have a look at some pretty cool things, which is the taper start and taper end. And by the way, if you can't click on these guys because the three buttons here are grayed out, this is because you have an After Effects version that is not compatible with taper and wave option that have been added only since the I think it's 17.1 version of After Effects. I think it's CC 2020 version of After Effects. And if you have previous version of After Effects, these three guys here will be grayed out. Okay? But any version after that, you will be able to use them. Okay, since I'm in 2020 version of After Effects, I can use these three guys. So let's make a demonstration of it. So this time I will select the opened path only. So this one, and this one, and this one. And I will click on the start taper. And instantly, as you can see, I have created a start taper on my stroke. And you can click the other button called end taper, and instantly it will be the one or the other, which is pretty cool because you can apply this to, let's say, tentacles, tails from animals, for example, hairs, whatever you want. But it's pretty cool to have this available with just one click. And speaking of clicking, as you can see, if I go over this button here, I have the help tip that tells me start taper, Alt-click create local controllers, and Alt-shift create global controllers. So what are these guys meaning? So if I try to see in the effect control here, I have nothing, for example, and each time I click on these guys, I just go inside each stroke instance, and I just set the start length or the end length, depending on which one you have chosen, to be 100. Okay, this is just what the script does by default. But now, if I reselect this, and if I Alt-click, so Option-click on Mac, so Alt-click on Windows, so if I maintain Alt-click, and if I click on that, as you can see now, each shape layer has received some effects that weren't there before. So if I go over all the shape layers I had selected before Alt-clicking this button, I can see that they all have the same effects. And please don't remove some of the effects, because you have now some expressions that are linked to these effects. So if I select this one, for example, which is this nice wave, I will type EE on the keyboard. As you can see, you have some expressions that refer to these effects here. So now I can go, let's say, in these guys and change the taper length from the start, the taper length for the end, okay, the taper start radius, the taper end radius, which is useful only if you have other values other than 0, for example, here. And you can use the taper start is, which is 0 by default, but you can use this option to play to offset the taper along the spline, and same for the end. So you can obtain different kind of interesting effects by just playing with these 6 effects. And each time you reselect this and you change the value here, it will reapply different values. And if you Alt-click on this guy or on this guy, it will reapply the correct value on start and end length. So this is cool, but what if I wanted all my shapes to share the same to share the same values for my taper? Well, because I can affect this one differently from this one for the moment. Okay, but what if I want all of them to share the same settings? Well, I will undo all this until I have not any effects created. So this is the case now. And I will reselect my shape. And now I will hold down the Alt key and the Shift key on the keyboard. Okay, and now if I Alt Shift key on this button and click, as you can see now, I have a new null that has been created that is called FX StrokeSetter control, and it has the same effects than previously, and all the shape layers have the same effects as previously, but they are all linked to the null, which is pretty cool because now if I play with the start length, as you can see, it will drive all the start length for all my shape layers, okay, which is pretty cool. And of course, it will drive only the shape layers that were selected, so it won't affect the closed ones because I didn't select them for the demonstration. But yeah, the blue ones here all depend now, thanks to the expressions, to the null control effects, which is pretty cool. So this is how the taper and the start and end work. And what I've demonstrated here with the local controls, which mean the local controls on each shape layer, and on the global controls, which are the controls available on the FX StrokeSetter control null, is true for the other guys here as well. So once you have understood the principle behind this, you will be able to apply the same principles in these guys here. So let's continue with the wave, for example. So let's undo that. I will undo. Okay, let's undo again. Yeah. Okay, so let's apply now some wave. So I will select all of them this time. And yeah, by the way, it's I have a pretty cool option to select all shape layers in composition. So let's say you have a composition with something complicated, like for example, a background that is not a shape layer, but a solid. Let's say you have a text. So this is a text. Let's say you have a light. Okay. Let's say you have, I don't know, a null and another null again. Okay, so in complex projects, it can become difficult to select all the shape layers because you have a timeline that is pretty big and you have to do that manually and be careful to not select layers that have not the star icon here. And yeah, it can become time consuming and it's really a pain in the ass. So in my FX StrokeSetter tool, I have a really cool shortcut here. If you go over the last icon, which is the help and info icon, I can just shift click on it, as you can see in the label here in the help tip. I can just shift click on it and instantly it will select all the shape layers in your current project, in the composition, in the active composition, sorry. And yeah, this is pretty useful in a lot of situations. So I will do that like that, for example. So let's shift click on it and all my shape layers are now selected. And I will now click on wave. And instantly you can see that I have some waves on the strokes. But just like for the taper, just clicking on that just applies some default wave, but it's not that interesting because I can't do the animation or by offsetting the phase, or I can't apply a different amplitude, or I can't have a different wavelength without diving into each shape layer manually. So I have to go to stroke here and find the wave and play with the amount here and the wavelength and play with the phase, but I have to do that for all of them. So this is why I will just undo that and I will redo it just like for the taper, but with the Alt click maintained on the keyboard. So just hold down the Alt, click on the keyboard and click on this guy, and now all the shapes have some local control, and it's different from global control again, because you have some effects on each layer that is independent from other layers, okay? But now I have a way to play with the options here without having to drill down all the options and all the groups in my composition. So this is cool, but what if I want to globally affect all of them at the same time? So again, I will undo that. And now I will Alt-Shift clicking on this wave button here. So Shift-Alt click. And just like for the taper option, I have recreated an FX StrokeSetter control null. And by the way, if you had already an FX StrokeSetter control null in your composition, it won't override things. It will just leave it there and just add the effects on the same null layer. So yeah, now if I select the FX StrokeSetter control and if I play with the wave amount and the wavelength, as you can see, I can tweak all these strokes at the same time, which is pretty cool. And you can, for example, alt-clicking the angle and type some simple expressions to animate all your guys here. So this is pretty cool. Let's undo that again. And this is how the wave option works. And let's add now some dashes. And yeah, I'm pretty glad to announce that this is the only tool available in After Effects that is able to deal with dashes. And it does it in a pretty clever way, I think. So let me show you that. So just for the sake of this one, I will just select this guy here, which is the simple rectangle. And I will, yeah, just click on that one. Just a single click without holding down any shortcut. So I will click on it and you can see a new window that appears that says -1, 20 and a plus icon. So what does it mean? Well, let me show you let me escape this first and let me explain you how it works, because it really mimics the way dashes work in After Effects. So if you drill down a stroke in After Effects, if you go to dashes, by default there is just nothing and you have a plus icon here. Well, this is just the same like this plus button here. And if you add one item, you will have a dash, which is the dash number 1, and an offset. And if you type plus again, you have a gap, which is the gap number 1. If you click on the plus again, you have a dash 2. On the plus again, you have a gap 2, plus dash 3, plus gap 3. And now, as you can see, we have reached a limit because you can't add more than 3 pairs of dashes and gaps. So you have dash 1, gap 1, dash 2, gap 2, dash 3, gap 3, and you have the last, which is the offset. So I can have, for example, let's change it to be a butt cap for the sake of this one. So for example, I can have 100 for the first dash, which is this big dash here. The gap is, of course, the gap that you see just after that. The dash 2 is the thin one that you can see here. I can have something like that, for example. So 50, for example. I can have a little gap for the gap 2. Dash 3, I can have something even bigger. And have a big gap for the last one. And as you can see, you can have some complex dashes system just by playing with these options here. And the offset, of course, lets you animate your dashes on your stroke. So let me undo all that until I don't have any dash at all. And now I will select this guy, and this guy, for example, and I will click on this one. And let's say I want to reproduce what I've done before. So I had 100 at the first dash. I can click on the plus button, and instantly you can see a gap 1 that is arriving. I will leave it at 25, for example. I can click again on plus, and you have a new dash, just like in After Effects natively. And you can set it to 50 like before. Plus you can have a really little gap 2, for example, and so on until you reach the limit of gap 3. And yeah, you can't add an offset because I don't have clicked on Alt or Shift to create controllers, for example, but I will talk about this later. So let's click and validate it like that. As you can see, I can't add more than that, but I can, if I don't want the 3 dash and gap here, I can click on minus, and as you can see, you will be able to delete the different rows. And be careful, because if you try to delete an intermediary row like this one, for example, it will tell that no, you can't because it's not the last item. So it's After Effects limitation, it will mess with the names, so you are bound to remove only the last item. So let's redo it. Okay, something like that and something like that, and it's okay. I will set dashes by clicking on this button here. And instantly, as you can see, it has worked, but due to the round cap, you can see it. So let's click on that. And yeah, you can see now that it has worked. But once again, just for the taper and the wave, it's just not that useful to leave like that, because yeah, you can dive into each shape independently and go to dashes, sorry, and you can play with this option, but you have to do it for anyone, so it's not that interesting. So let's undo that. And now if I reselect them again, if I hold down the Alt key on the keyboard while clicking on this button again, just like for this one, it will create some local controls. So let's redo it again. Let's say 100, 25, 50, and it was 5, I think. And yeah, set select. And since I had holding down the Alt key on the keyboard while clicking on this guy, it has created for each shape some controllers on the effects panel, which is pretty cool. So let's again change the butt cap. Okay, and now I can play with this option without twirling down the content subgroups for each shape layer. But it will be even more interesting if I could have created global controls for that. Again, it's really interesting to do that, either because you want to link these master controllers to another composition to retain some consistency in the effects for a whole project, for example, or if you plan to make a template, an editable template with by putting some of the effects in essential graphic panel in order to use as a Morgert. Okay, so it could be master property, and it could be useful, to create global controls in these cases. So let me undo that again last time. So yeah, select this. Okay. So, and by the way, if you select another guy, like the text, for example, and if you try anything like this, for example, it will it will prompt you with an error message, and it says that it's not a shape layer. So of course it will be ignored. So let's select them again, and this time let's click on this with the Shift and the Alt key all down of your keyboard. So click on it. Again, let's create all the controls. I will do all this, set select, and yeah. As you can see, it has worked. I can see it even if it's not on the bad cap here. And as you can see in the FX StrokeSetter here, I have now the control to change all the dashes at the same time. And yeah, it's pretty cool. So yeah, this is how the dashes module work in my tool. And you have the dashes offset that can be used to animate the dashes along the path. So it's pretty cool too. And let me show you another cool trick if you want to reset your strokes. So let me show you that with this one, and this one too. So I want to remove all the dashes in these effects. So to do that, you can click on this guy, this last guy here. And if you just try to reset it, it will remove all the dashes, but it won't remove the dependencies. So as you can see, the effects are still there, okay, and I don't want them to be there. And I don't want my FX StrokeSetter control null to exist anymore. So I will reselect them, and I will shift click on this guy. Just if you have any doubt, just go over any icon and read the label. As you can see in the label, it's called Reset Stroke Dashes Wave and Taper Effects. If you just click on it, so as you can see, the dashes have been removed, but the effects and the dependencies are there again, are still there. And if you shift click, as you can see in the label, shift click on it will hard reset the stroke, and it will remove local and global controllers. So let's redo it. So select them again and shift click on this, and as you can see, it will prompt you with a message that warns you about the fact that you will delete the null layer. And yes, in my case, I want to delete that. So click on yes. And as you can see now, the shape layers haven't got any effects at all. They have been removed, and the control null have been removed too. So this is a cool trick, this last guy here, in order to reset your stroke quickly. And yeah, by the way, if you let me show you a cool trick. So if I select it, I select all the shape layers by shift clicking this guy again. Let's add, let's say, Shift Alt click. This will create a new FX StrokeSetter control with, of course, all the taper options. I will reselect my shape layers again, and I will apply the wave by Shift Alt clicking. This guy will add all the effects and the effects in the null object as well. So I have the taper plus the wave effects on the null layer. And again, if I shift click on this one, and if I shift alt click on this dashes icon here, I can add all the dashes if I want. Actually, I just want this two here, so set dashes, okay. And now, as you can see, in the FX StrokeSetter control, I have taper, wave, and the dashes options. All controls are there. So this is cool if you want to promote them in master properties, or if you want to link all that to a master control comp in order to gain consistency over your project. And yeah, this is pretty cool. But if you want to reset all that at the same time, you can just shift click on this guy and shift click on that. And if I click on yes, as you can see, all the taper, wave, and dashes have been removed, and the null objects have been deleted as well. So you have now retrieved in just 2 clicks the strokes that are like before. Okay, cool. And the last thing I wanted to show you is how to use this last guy here, which is the straight line, the straight icon, not to reset stroke, but as you can see in the help tip, if you alt click or if you alt shift click, you can use this to set the stroke width, the stroke color, and the stroke opacity for all the strokes, which is pretty useful too. So let me show you that. So shift click again on this guy to select all the shape layers, and alt click on this guy. And as you can see, now you have another color that has been set. On each shape layer, you have now a control called stroke width, which allows you, of course, to play with the width of your stroke. You can play with the color, of course. You can play with the opacity. And just like for the other guys here, this is just a local control, so it's just independently controls from other layers. And you can change the color per layer if you want to, because I've just clicked on Alt by clicking this button. But it will be cool if I could do that globally. So let's remove it. And yeah, before that, let me explain to you what is this checkbox control here, which is called non-rescaling stroke width. So this is a pretty cool option. You have this kind of option too in butt capper, I think. But if you scale with the scale up property here, if you scale your shape, of course, the stroke will be bigger and bigger. So you will have a really big width, you see here. But if you want to maintain a fixed width visually while rescaling your layer in order for your to have a consistency over your stroke width with all the other layers, you can do that by just clicking this checkbox here. So if I click on it, as you can see, now it stays at this value here. So even if I make the layer way bigger or way smaller, the size of the width, of the stroke will retain and maintain its visual width, which is pretty cool too in a lot of situations. And it works with parent too. So if I reset this scale to normal, and if I, let's say, create a null object, and if I take this guy, and this guy, and if I parent them to the null, okay, now they all depend to the same parent. So let me apply the same color for all the null children here. So now if I scale the null, as you can see, only this one will maintain a fixed visual width while the other ones don't, okay? But if I go to the plus signs here, which is the shape here, I can tick this option on, and same for this guy, I can tick this on, and as you can see now, even if this is the parent that is rescaling, you can still have a consistency over the stroke width everywhere. So this is a really cool option. And now if I undo all that, and if I just shift that, select that, just shift key, yes, I want to clear all the dependencies. Okay, great. And as you can see, it won't retrieve the original color. This is a downside of these manipulations, but you can easily, since there weren't any expression anymore, you can just go over the top bar here and change the color of all your shapes at the same time from there. And now if I Alt Shift key on this guy, let me show you. Again, you will have the same controls, but they have been created globally on the null, which is called, again, FX StrokeSetter control. And now I can change the color for all my layers at the same time, and I can change the width, I can animate this with an expression, which can't do it, which can't be done with just this top option here, because you can't apply expression there. But yeah, this is pretty cool, and you can check for all them. So if you select all your shapes and if you resize them, as you can see, they all maintain a visual consistency in the width. So this is pretty cool. And what's cool about this is that you can combine all of this and have all the global controls in your same FX StrokeSetter control. So let's do it. So shift click, add with the Shift Alt key some taper control, some wave control, and some dashes control, like that, for example. And yeah, I have now the ability to play with all this from the effect panel, which is pretty cool. Okay, so as you can see, it works pretty well. And you can play with the taper, you can play with the wave, you can play with the dashes, and yeah, you have the idea. So let's undo that. I strongly prefer the version with just this nice color here. And yeah, this is it for the presentation. I hope you guys will like this tool as much as I do. I use it a lot. I use it a lot in production, and I hope to see you later for all the cool stuff. So see you guys. Bye.